The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor, and I watched 32 years of my life explode into 1,000 glittering pieces right along with it. "You're adopted, Jack." My mother's voice cut through the dining room like a scalpel through flesh. "We thought you should know before we finalized the estate planning." I stared at Margaret Mallory, the woman who'd raised me, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her Botox-frozen face showing about as much emotion as the oil painting behind her. The family portrait where I'd always looked slightly out of place now made perfect sense. Adopted. The word tasted like copper in my mouth. 32 years, and you're telling me this now? My wife Evelyn didn't even look up from her phone. She sat there in her designer dress, manicured fingers dancing across the screen, completely absorbed in whatever was more important than watching my world implode. Probably texting her boss again. Brent Lockwood seemed to require a lot of after-hours communication for a law partner. The timing seemed appropriate, my father Charles said, adjusting his tie with the same mechanical precision he used for everything else. Given that we're restructuring the inheritance. Restructuring, I laughed, but it came out hollow. Let me guess. The $31 million estate that I thought I'd inherit as the oldest son, that restructuring? My younger brother David smirked from across the table. Well, you're not really the oldest son, are you? Not technically. Sarah, my sister, at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. David, don't be a Johnson about it. A Johnson? Sarah, he's not even family. Why should he get a cent of Dad's money when he's not a real Mallory? The rage hit me like a freight train. I stood up so fast my chair toppled backward, the crash echoing through the mansion's dining room. Not a real Mallory? I've been a real Mallory for 32 years. I've lived in this house, carried this name, worked in the family business. The family business you're about to be removed from, Charles interrupted. We think it's best if you pursue other opportunities. Other opportunities. Like I was being laid off from some corporate job instead of being erased from the only family I'd ever known. Evelyn finally looked up from her phone, her green eyes cold as winter lake water. Jack, maybe we should discuss this at home. Home? I stared at my wife of 5 years. You knew, didn't you? You knew they were going to do this. She had the grace to flush slightly. I thought they might mention the adoption, yes, but the inheritance discussion is between you and your parents. My parents. I looked around the table at these people who'd just cut me loose like a diseased limb. Right, my parents. Margaret dabbed at her lips with a linen napkin, a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache. Jack, you're being dramatic. We've provided you with an excellent education, a comfortable upbringing, connections in the business world. Many adopted children would be grateful for such opportunities. Grateful. The word came out like a curse. You want me to be grateful that you waited until I was 32 to tell me my entire life has been a lie? Not a lie, Charles corrected. Simply incomplete information. I wanted to flip the table. I wanted to grab my father by his perfectly pressed collar and shake him until his teeth rattled. Instead, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found what I was looking for. What are you doing? Evelyn asked, finally showing some interest in the proceedings. Calling Frank Harlan. He's a private investigator. I hit the call button and put the phone to my ear. If you people won't tell me the truth about my life, I'll find someone who will. The phone rang twice before a gravelly voice answered. Harlan Investigations. Frank, it's Jack Mallory. I need you to find my biological parents, and I need you to do it fast. Jack? What's going on, son? I just found out I'm adopted, and my loving family has decided to cut me out of a $31 million inheritance because I'm not really one of them. I stared directly at Margaret as I spoke. Apparently, family ties matter more than 32 years of believing someone actually cared about you. Jesus. Okay, I can start tomorrow morning. My rate is, I don't care about your rate. Find them. I hung up and looked around the table one more time. David was grinning like he'd won the lottery. Sarah was studying her salad like it held the secrets of the universe. Charles and Margaret looked like they were already mentally redecorating my childhood bedroom. And Evelyn? Evelyn was texting again. You know what the funny thing is? I said, backing toward the dining room door. I actually loved you people. All of you. I would have done anything for this family. Jack, Sarah started. No. I held up a hand. I'm done. You want me out of the family? Congratulations. You got your wish. But don't expect me to go quietly. I turned and walked out of the mansion, leaving behind the only life I'd ever known. Behind me, I could hear Evelyn's heels clicking on the marble as she followed. "Jack, wait!" I stopped at my truck, keys already in hand. "What, Evelyn? You want to tell me you knew about this too? That you and your best friend Lydia have been laughing about poor, stupid Jack, who didn't know he was adopted?" I didn't, she struggled for words, which was unusual for a lawyer. "I thought they might tell you eventually, but I didn't know they were planning to disinherit you. But you knew I was adopted." She looked down at her designer shoes. "Brent mentioned it once. He handles some legal work for your parents, and he said something about adoption papers in their files." Brent? Of course. Her boss, who required so much after-hours attention. The man she'd been working late with 3 nights a week for the past 2 months. "And you didn't think to mention this to your husband? I thought it was their place to tell you, not mine." I laughed, and this time it was genuinely amused. Right, just like it was their place to tell me they were cutting me out of the will. How convenient for everyone. "Jack, please, let's go home and talk about this." Home. I climbed into my truck and started the engine. "Yeah, let's do that. Let's go home and pretend everything's normal. Let's pretend my wife didn't know my entire life was built on a lie. Let's pretend the people who raised me didn't just throw me away like garbage." I put the truck in drive and rolled down the window. "You coming, or are you going to stay here and celebrate with the real family?" Evelyn climbed into the passenger seat, but she was already reaching for her phone again. Probably needed to update Brent on the evening's festivities. As I drove away from the Mallory mansion for what I suspected might be the last time, I made myself a promise. If they wanted to play hardball, I'd show them what a real game looked like. After all, I had nothing left to lose. Frank Harlan's office smelled like stale coffee and broken dreams. The private investigator looked exactly like Central Casting would order for the role. Rumpled suit, 3-day stubble, and eyes that had seen too much of humanity's dark side. His desk was buried under manila folders and empty bourbon bottles that he didn't bother hiding. "Sit down, Jack." Frank gestured to a chair that had seen better decades. "We need to talk." It had been 3 days since the family dinner that went off the rails. 3 days of Evelyn tiptoeing around me like I might explode at any moment. 3 days of her working late, while I sat in our modest house and staring at the walls and wondering who I really was. "You found them," wasn't a question. "I found them." Frank opened a thick folder and pulled out a photograph. "But first, you need to understand something. What I'm about to tell you is going to change your life, again. It can't get much worse." Frank slid the photograph across his desk. It showed a distinguished man in his 60s with salt and pepper hair and intelligent eyes. He looked familiar in a way that made my chest tight. "Your biological father is Thomas Whitmore." The name hit me like a punch to the gut. The Thomas Whitmore? The former prime minister? The very same. Frank pulled out another photo, this one of an elegant woman with kind eyes and graying blonde hair. "Your mother is Catherine Whitmore. She was a federal judge before she retired." I stared at the photographs, searching for resemblances. The man had my nose, my jawline. The woman had my eyes, the same shade of blue-gray that had always looked out of place in the Mallory family. How? The word came out as a whisper. Frank leaned back in his chair, which creaked ominously. "You were kidnapped when you were 6 months old. Taken from your nursery in the middle of the night. The FBI worked the case for years, but the trail went cold. Your parents never stopped looking for you. Kidnapped." I set the photographs down with shaking hands. "You're telling me the Mallorys kidnapped me?" "I'm telling you that someone did. And whoever arranged it had money, connections, and the ability to create a convincing paper trail. The adoption papers your parents have? They're good forgeries, but they're still forgeries." My phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn. "Working late again tonight, don't wait up." Working late. Right. "There's more," Frank continued. "Your biological parents have been searching for you your entire life. They've hired investigators, worked with law enforcement, followed every lead. They never gave up hope. And now they want to meet you, but, Jack, there's something else you need to know. The people who took you, they might not be done with you." A chill ran down my spine. "What do you mean?" "I mean that powerful people went to a lot of trouble to separate you from your biological family. And now that you're asking questions, you might be stirring up a hornet's nest." As if to punctuate his words, a black sedan pulled up outside Frank's office window. 2 men in expensive suits got out and looked directly at the building. Crap! Frank was already moving, grabbing files and shoving them into a briefcase. "Back door, Now. What's happening? Questions later. Moving now. I followed Frank through a cluttered back room and out into an alley behind his building. My truck was parked on the street, but Frank grabbed my arm when I started toward it. Not your truck. They'll be watching it. They? Who's they? Frank's phone rang. He answered it while scanning the alley. Yeah, already? Okay, we're coming. He hung up and looked at me with something that might have been sympathy. That was your biological father's security team. They've been monitoring the situation since I started digging into your case. They're here to help. A different black car pulled into the alley, this one with tinted windows. The driver got out, and I recognized the type immediately. Ex-military, alert, dangerous. He nodded to Frank. Mr. Mallory, I'm Mike. Your father sent me. My father. The words felt strange in my mouth. Thomas Whitmore sent you. Yes, sir. He and your mother are waiting to meet you, but we need to get you somewhere safe first. There are people who don't want this reunion to happen. I thought about Evelyn, probably in Brent's office right now, doing God knows what while I discovered that my entire life had been built on a crime. I thought about the Mallorys, sitting in their mansion, dividing up their fortune while the son they'd stolen sat in a PI's office learning the truth. Let's go, I said. The ride to the hotel took 20 minutes through downtown traffic. Mike didn't say much, but he kept checking his mirrors and took several unnecessary turns. Professional paranoia or legitimate concern, I couldn't tell. The hotel was downtown, expensive, the kind of place where senators and foreign diplomats stayed when they visited the city. Mike led me through a service entrance and up a back stairway to the penthouse floor. They're in the presidential suite, he said, stopping in front of double doors. Take your time. They've been waiting 32 years for this moment. I knocked and the door opened immediately. The man from the photograph stood there, older now, with lines around his eyes that spoke of decades of worry. But when he saw me, his face transformed with an expression of pure joy mixed with heartbreak. My God, he whispered, you look just like your grandfather. Behind him, the woman from the photograph was crying. Catherine Whitmore, former federal judge, reduced to tears by the sight of the son she'd lost as an infant. Jack, she said, and her voice broke on my name. I stood there in the doorway looking at these strangers who were my parents, and felt something crack open in my chest. Not the bitter anger I'd carried since the dinner at the Mallorys, but something deeper, a sense of recognition, of coming home to a place I'd never been. I don't know what to call you, I said. Thomas Whitmore smiled, and I saw my own smile reflected back at me. How about we start with Mom and Dad and see how that feels? I stepped into the suite, and for the first time in 3 days, I felt like I could breathe again. But even as I embraced the parents I'd never known I had, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The Mallorys had stolen 32 years of my life, and my wife was cheating on me with her boss. Someone was going to pay for all of it. I should have gone straight home after meeting my biological parents. I should have called Evelyn and told her about the most incredible day of my life. I should have been a better husband. Instead, I sat in my truck outside Evelyn's law firm at 9:30 at night, watching the windows of the 15th floor where Lockwood, Harris, and Associates kept their offices. Most of the building was dark, but I could see lights in the corner office, Brent Lockwood's office. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Evelyn and 2 text messages. Where are you? And getting worried, call me. Getting worried, right? Worried that I might come home early and interrupt her evening activities. I'd spent 4 hours with Thomas and Catherine Whitmore, my real parents, learning about the family I'd been stolen from. I had 2 half-sisters, both doctors, both married with children I'd never met. I had grandparents who'd died still hoping to see their missing grandson again. I had a trust fund worth more than the entire Mallory estate, money that had been sitting untouched for 3 decades, waiting for me to come home. And I had a wife who was screwing her boss, while I discovered that my entire life had been built on a lie. The elevator in the law firm building required a key card after hours, but I'd been here enough times to know that the parking garage entrance stayed unlocked until 10. Security was surprisingly lax for a firm that handled high-profile clients. I took the stairs to the 15th floor, my footsteps echoing in the empty stairwell. The hallway was dimly lit, but I could see lights spilling from under Brent's office door. I could also hear voices, low, intimate voices. I pressed my ear to the door. Told you he was getting suspicious, Evelyn was saying. He's not suspicious. Brent replied. He's just dealing with family drama. You said his parents cut him out of the will? Completely. $31 million gone. They told him he was adopted and basically threw him out of the family. Brent laughed. Jesus, poor bastard. Though I have to say, it makes things easier for us. How do you figure? Think about it, Ev. He's got no family money, no prospects beyond that blue-collar job of his. You're a rising star at one of the city's most prestigious law firms. How long before you realize you can do better? There was a pause, then the sound of movement, fabric rustling, a soft moan that I recognized as my wife's. We should be careful, Evelyn whispered. If he found out, he's not going to find out. And even if he did, what's he going to do? He's got nothing, no money, no connections, no power. He's a nobody. A nobody. My wife's lover thought I was a nobody. I should have kicked in the door. I should have confronted them right there, caught them in the act, made them face what they were doing. Instead, I stood in that hallway and listened to my wife betray our marriage while discussing my family's cruelty like it was office gossip. I do feel bad for him, Evelyn said. Finding out he was adopted like that, losing his inheritance. You feel bad enough to keep screwing him while you're screwing me? Brent's voice was amused. How modern of you. It's not like that, isn't it? Come on, Ev. We both know this marriage has an expiration date. The only question is when you're going to pull the trigger. More rustling. More sounds I didn't want to hear. I backed away from the door and walked to the elevator, my hands shaking with rage. The nobody was about to become somebody they'd never forget. But first, I needed to make a phone call. Thomas Whitmore answered on the second ring. Jack, is everything all right? I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Of course. The trust fund you mentioned. How much money are we talking about? There was a pause. $47 million as of the last quarterly report. It's been invested conservatively over the years, but it's grown substantially. $47 million. More than the entire Mallory estate. And it's mine? Legally mine? Completely. The trust was established when you were born, and it transfers to you automatically now that we've found you. There are some legal formalities, but the money is yours. How quickly can we make this public? Another pause, longer this time. Public? Jack, are you sure that's wise? There are still people out there who might not want... I want everyone to know. I want it in the newspapers, on the internet, everywhere. I want the whole world to know that Jack Mallory is Thomas Whitmore's son and heir. May I ask why? I thought about Evelyn and Brent, probably still tangled up together in his office, discussing my pathetic life while they betrayed me. Because some people need to learn that the nobody they've been screwing over isn't as powerless as they think. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. All right, I'll have my people contact the media tomorrow morning. But Jack, be careful. Once this information is public, everything changes. Your life will never be private again. Good, I said. I'm tired of living in the shadows. I hung up and drove home, where I found Evelyn's car in the driveway and lights on in the living room. She'd beaten me home, probably breaking several speed limits to establish her alibi. She was waiting for me when I walked through the front door, still wearing the same dress she'd had on when she left for work that morning. Her hair was slightly mussed, her lipstick gone. Where have you been? She demanded. I've been calling you for hours. I had some business to take care of. What kind of business? Jack, you're scaring me. Ever since the dinner at your parents' house, you've been acting strange. Strange? I looked at my wife, this woman I'd loved for 5 years, and felt nothing but contempt. You think I'm acting strange because I found out my entire life was a lie? That's not what I meant. What did you mean, Evelyn? What exactly did you mean? She took a step back, and I realized I was advancing on her. I stopped, took a breath, got control of myself. I met my biological parents today, I said. Her face went pale. You what? I met them, Thomas and Catherine Whitmore. Lovely people. Very interested in reconnecting with the son who was stolen from them 32 years ago. Stolen? Jack, that's a serious accusation. It's not an accusation, it's a fact. I was kidnapped as an infant and sold to the Mallorys like a piece of property. Evelyn sank into the couch, her face white. My God. Jack, I had no idea. Didn't you? I sat down across from her, studying her face. Your boss, Brent, handles legal work for the Mallorys. He knew I was adopted. Did he know about the kidnapping too? I don't know. How could I know that? How indeed. I pulled out my phone and opened the news app. You might want to check the morning headlines tomorrow. I think you'll find them interesting. What are you talking about? You'll see. I I stood up and headed for the stairs. Jack, wait. We need to talk about this. I paused at the bottom of the stairs and looked back at her. Do we? Do we really need to talk, Evelyn? Because I'm getting the feeling that we don't have much to say to each other anymore. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm tired. It's been a long day. I found my real parents, learned I'm worth $47 million, and discovered that my wife thinks I'm a nobody with no money, no connections, and no power. Her face went from pale to gray. Jack, good night, Evelyn. Enjoy your dreams. I went upstairs and locked the bedroom door behind me. Tomorrow, the whole world would know who Jack Mallory really was. And then the real fun would begin. The headline read, Kidnapped heir found after 32 years. Son of former Prime Minister Thomas Whitmore, discovered living under assumed identity. My photo is on the front page of every major newspaper in the country. Not the family photo from the Mallory Christmas cards, but a new one, taken at yesterday's press conference. I stood between Thomas and Catherine Whitmore, looking like I belonged there, in a way I'd never belonged anywhere else. The story had everything the media loved: political intrigue, a decades-old kidnapping, a family reunion, and enough money to make people pay attention. $47 million bought a lot of headlines. My phone had been ringing non-stop since 6 a.m. Reporters, old acquaintances, people I hadn't heard from in years suddenly very interested in reconnecting. I turned it off after the 15th call and made coffee in blessed silence. Evelyn hadn't come home last night. I was reading the Times article for the third time when someone knocked on my front door. Through the window, I could see a black sedan in my driveway. Mike, Thomas's security man, stood on my porch looking alert and professional. "Morning, Mr. Mallory," he said when I opened the door. "Your father asked me to check on you. Make sure you're handling the media attention okay." "I'm fine, though I think I need to get used to being called Mr. Whitmore." "That's up to you, sir. Legally, you can use either name." Mike stepped inside and immediately began scanning the room with trained eyes. "Any unusual activity, strange phone calls, unexpected visitors?" "Just reporters." "Why?" "Because not everyone is happy about yesterday's announcement. Your father's received some threatening calls, and there's been chatter on certain channels about the situation." "What kind of chatter?" "The kind that suggests some people would prefer if you'd never been found." A chill ran down my spine. The people who arranged the kidnapping? Possibly. Or people who benefited from your absence and don't want that to change. My phone, which I'd turned back on to call Thomas, buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Some secrets should stay buried. I showed the message to Mike, who frowned and immediately made a phone call. "We need to move you," he said after hanging up. "Your father's arranged a safe house until we can assess the threat level. I'm not running. Sir, with respect, you don't understand the situation. These people have already committed kidnapping and fraud. They've had 32 years to build their lives around your absence. They're not going to give up without a fight." Another knock at the door interrupted us. Mike immediately drew a tool from inside his jacket and motioned for me to stay back. "Jack," Evelyn's voice called from outside. "Jack, I know you're in there. We need to talk." Mike looked at me questioningly. I nodded and he holstered his tool but stayed alert. Evelyn looked like she'd been up all night. Her clothes were wrinkled, her makeup smeared, her hair disheveled. She'd been crying. "Jesus, Jack, I saw the news." She pushed past me into the living room, then stopped when she saw Mike. "Who's this?" "Security," I said. "Evelyn, meet Mike. Mike, this is my wife." "Your wife who didn't come home last night," Mike observed. Evelyn flushed. "I stayed at Lydia's. I needed to think." "About what?" "About this." She gestured at the newspapers scattered on my coffee table. "About the fact that my husband is apparently the son of a former prime minister and worth $47 million, and I had to find out from the morning news. Would you have preferred to find out from Brent?" She went very still. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I know, Evelyn. I know about the affair. I know you think I'm a nobody with no prospects, and I know you've been planning to leave me." Mike cleared his throat. "I'll wait outside." "No," I said, "and stay. This won't take long." Evelyn was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. "You followed me?" "I didn't have to follow you. I just had to pay attention. 3 nights a week, working late, always with Brent. Phone calls at all hours, text messages you wouldn't let me see. You weren't exactly subtle." "Jack, I can explain." "Can you? Can you explain why you were discussing my family problems with your lover?" Can you explain why you thought it was appropriate to analyze my prospects while you were screwing another man? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. For once in her life, the lawyer had no words. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to pack your things and move out. Today. You can stay with Brent or Lydia or whoever else you've been confiding in about what a loser your husband is. Jack, please, I made a mistake. A mistake? Which part was the mistake, Evelyn? Sleeping with Brent or getting caught? Tears started streaming down her face. I never meant for this to happen. It just did. Right, it just happened. Like accidentally walking into his office. Like accidentally taking your clothes off. Like accidentally betraying your marriage vows. My phone rang. Thomas Whitmore's name appeared on the screen. I have to take this, I told Evelyn. When I'm done with this call, I want you gone. I answered the phone. Hello, Thomas. Jack, thank God. Are you all right? Mike told me about the threatening message. I'm fine, just dealing with some personal business. The media attention has been intense. I wanted to make sure you're prepared for what comes next. What comes next? Lawyers, for one thing. The people who arranged your kidnapping are going to fight the trust fund transfer. They'll claim fraud, challenge your identity, tie everything up in court for years if they can. I looked at Evelyn, who was listening to every word with growing interest. Let them try, I said. I've got the best legal team money can buy now, don't I? You do, but Jack, there's something else. We've been investigating the kidnapping and we think we know who was behind it. My blood went cold. Who? Charles Mallory, your adoptive father. He was in financial trouble 32 years ago, facing bankruptcy. The adoption was arranged through a lawyer who's since disappeared, but we found financial records showing large payments to Mallory around the time you were taken. Charles Mallory, the man who'd raised me, who'd just cut me out of his will, who'd told me I wasn't really family. He hadn't just adopted me, he'd stolen me. Jack, are you there? I'm here. My voice sounded strange, distant. I need to go. There's something I have to do. I hung up and looked at Evelyn, who was staring at me with wide eyes. Your adoptive father kidnapped you? She whispered. Apparently. My God, Jack. What are you going to do? I smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. I'm going to make sure everyone gets exactly what they deserve. What does that mean? It means you should pack quickly, Evelyn. Things are about to get very complicated around here. She stood there for another moment, then went upstairs to pack. I could hear her moving around, opening drawers, closing suitcases. Mike came back inside. Everything all right, sir? Perfect, I said. Everything's absolutely perfect. For the first time in days, I meant it. Frank Harlan's new office was in a better part of town, paid for with the substantial bonus I'd given him for finding my biological parents. The bourbon was top shelf now, and he'd traded his rumpled suit for something that actually fit. Brent Lockwood, he said, sliding a thick folder across his desk. 38 years old, senior partner at Lockwood, Harrison Associates, married to Patricia Lockwood for 12 years, 2 kids in private school. Married. I opened the folder and studied the photographs. Brent with his wife at charity events. Brent with his children at school functions. Brent accepting an award from the State Bar Association. The perfect family man. Does his wife know about the affairs? Affairs, plural. Your wife isn't his first. I've documented at least 3 other relationships with junior associates over the past 5 years. The man has a pattern. Evidence? Frank pulled out another folder. Hotel receipts, credit card statements, photographs, witness statements. Enough to destroy his marriage and his career if it went public. What about financial irregularities? That's where it gets interesting. Frank leaned back in his chair, which no longer creaked. Lockwood's been skimming from client escrow accounts. Small amounts, but consistent. Over the past 3 years, he's embezzled approximately $200,000. Enough for criminal charges? More than enough. The state bar takes theft from client accounts very seriously. He'd be disbarred, probably do prison time. I closed the folders and looked at Frank. I want copies of everything, and I want you to keep digging. There's got to be more. What are you planning, Jack? I'm planning to give Mr. Lockwood exactly what he deserves. My next stop was the Dockside Tavern, a dive bar on the lake where construction workers, mechanics, and other blue-collar types gathered after work. I'd been drinking there for years, back when I thought I was just another working-class guy trying to make ends meet. Now I walked in as the heir to a $47 million fortune. But I was still wearing my work clothes and driving my beat-up truck. Some things didn't need to change. Jack! Tommy Morrison, a crane operator I'd known for years, waved me over to the bar. Holy crap, man. Saw you on the news. Former Prime Minister's son. Are you kidding me? It's been a weird week, I said, signaling the bartender for a beer. Weird? Dude, you went from regular guy to millionaire overnight. That's not weird. That's absolutely miraculous. Word had already spread through the bar. Within minutes, I was surrounded by guys I'd known for years, all wanting to hear the story. I gave them the abbreviated version. Kidnapped as a baby, raised by the kidnappers, recently discovered the truth. So what are you going to do now? Asked Pete Kowalski, a plumber who'd helped me fix my kitchen sink last year. You still going to work construction, or are you going to live like a rich guy? I'm going to take care of some unfinished business first. What kind of business? I pulled out my phone and showed them a photo of Brent Lockwood from his law firm's website. You see this guy? He's been screwing my wife while telling her what a loser I am. Apparently, he thinks blue-collar workers are beneath him. The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. These were men who took pride in their work, who'd built half the buildings in the city with their own hands. Being looked down on by some suit-wearing lawyer didn't sit well with them. What do you want us to do? Tommy asked. Nothing illegal, I said quickly. But this guy drives a brand new BMW, parks it in the lot behind his office building every day. Silver sedan, license plate BL Lawn. Vanity plates. BL Lawn, Pete repeated. What a douchebag. He's also got a condo in the Harbor District. Expensive place, lots of glass, overlooks the water. The kind of place where a guy might feel really secure and untouchable. I finished my beer and left a $100 tip, which caused another stir among my friends. Old habits die hard, but money talks louder. The next morning, I got a call from Mike. Sir, you need to see the news. I turned on the television to find a reporter standing in front of Lockwood Harrison Associates. Behind her, I could see Brent's BMW, or what was left of it. Someone had covered it in bumper stickers. Honk if you're screwing someone's wife. Adulterers on board, and my other car is your husband's trust. The windows were covered in what looked like maple syrup, and someone had filled the interior with bird seed. Seagulls were having a feast. Vandalism occurred sometime during the night, the reporter was saying. Police are investigating, but so far there are no suspects. My phone rang. Evelyn's name appeared on the screen. Did you do this? She demanded without preamble. Do what? Don't play dumb, Jack. Brent's car was destroyed last night. Was it? That's terrible. I hope he has good insurance. This isn't funny. He's talking about pressing charges, filing a lawsuit. Against who? Does he have any evidence that I was involved? Silence on the other end of the line. Evelyn, I was at home all night. Mike can vouch for me. We were discussing security arrangements for the safe house, which was technically true. Mike and I had discussed security for about 10 minutes before I went to bed. What I'd done before that conversation was between me and my new friends at the Dockside Tavern. Jack, please, this has to stop. What has to stop? I haven't done anything. You know what you're doing, and you know why you're doing it. Do I? Why don't you explain it to me? Another long pause. Because you found out about Brent and me. Found out? Evelyn, you weren't exactly discreet. Half the city probably knew about your affair before I did. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How is it supposed to happen? Were you planning to ask for a divorce before or after you finished screwing him in our bed? We didn't. Didn't what? Didn't use our bed? Just his office, then? How romantic. I could hear her crying, but I felt nothing. The woman I'd loved was gone, replaced by a stranger who'd betrayed everything we'd built together. I'm sorry, she whispered. Jack, I'm so sorry. Sorry you did it, or sorry you got caught. Both. I'm sorry for all of it. So am I, Evelyn. So am I. I hung up and called Frank Harlan. I want you to deliver those files to Patricia Lockwood, I said. Today. You sure about this, Jack? Once that information gets out, there's no taking it back. I'm sure. It's time Mrs. Lockwood learned what kind of man she married. And the embezzlement evidence? Send copies to the State Bar Association and the District Attorney's Office. Anonymous tips from a concerned citizen. This is going to destroy him. Good, I said. He should have thought about that before he decided I was a nobody. By the end of the week, Brent Lockwood's life had imploded. His wife had filed for divorce and was seeking full custody of their children. The State Bar had launched an investigation into his financial practices. Three of his biggest clients had fired him after learning about the embezzlement. And Evelyn had been let go from the law firm for conduct unbecoming a professional. I should have felt satisfied. Instead, I felt empty. But the week wasn't over yet.